All right, let's get right into it. We hear a lot about these big, powerful institutions, the ones designed to be the ultimate watchdog against corruption. And in India, that institution is the Lokpal. It was created to be this strong, independent body that could hold even the highest offices in the country accountable. But here's the question. What happens when a watchdog, that's supposed to be fierce, seems to have lost its bite?
Well, that's the exact question that's making headlines right now. It's been more than a decade since this whole thing was set up, but a recent parliamentary committee report is basically sounding the alarm. It's highlighting that India's top anti-corruption body is struggling with, well, a kind of operational paralysis. It exists on paper, for sure, but is it actually working in the real world?
And that really gets us to the heart of what we're talking about today. We're going to unpack this gap between what the Lokpal was supposed to be and the tough reality it's facing right now. I mean, why is this powerful idea, an idea that came out of a massive public movement against corruption, hitting so many roadblocks?
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the original promise of the Lokpal and how it was designed. Then, we're going to get into the really critical part, why people are calling it a tiger on paper, and explore the failures holding it back. After that, we'll check out the solutions that could give it its bite back. And finally, we'll pull together the key takeaways for anyone studying this really important piece of governance.
Okay, so first things first. Let's start with the absolute basics. What exactly is the Lokpal, according to the law that created it?
So, the Lokpal is, number one, a statutory body. And this is a really key term. It just means it was created by an act of parliament, the Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act of 2013. Its powers aren't just made up by the government of the day, they're written into law. It's also designed to be autonomous, which means it's supposed to be independent from government influence, so it can investigate anyone without fear. And then there's this term, sui generis. It's Latin for of its own kind, and it's a huge deal. It means the Lokpal is unique. It's not just another investigation agency. It was built for one specific, massive job, to tackle corruption at the very highest levels.
Now, to pull off a job that big, you need a very specific design and a whole lot of power. So let's take a look at the anatomy of this watchdog, at least as it was drawn up in the law.
The whole institution is headed by a chairperson, and it can have up to 8 members. But the composition here is really interesting. It's deliberately balanced. Exactly half of the members have to have a judicial background, bringing in that legal expertise. The other half are non-judicial members who can bring in experience from other important fields like finance, public administration, or anti-corruption policy. The law also insists on social diversity, making sure at least half of all members are from SC, ST, OBC communities, minorities, and women. This is so the watchdog reflects society as a whole. And their term, 5 years, or until they turn 70, is meant to give them job security, so they don't have to worry about political pressure.
So, who gets to pick these people? Well, it's this super high-powered selection committee. And just look at who's on it. It's like a masterclass in checks and balances, on paper anyway. It's chaired by the Prime Minister, the head of the government. But to balance that, you've got the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the Leader of the Opposition to bring in a non-government view, and the Chief Justice of India to provide that crucial judicial oversight. And to top it off, there's an eminent jurist to add an independent legal voice. The whole idea is to make sure appointments are based on consensus, protecting the Lokpal's independence from day one.
Now, let's talk about how far the Lokpal's reach goes, its jurisdiction. And honestly, it's incredibly broad. It covers pretty much the entire central government. This was a huge point of debate, giving it the power to investigate everyone from the Prime Minister and Union Ministers all the way down to every single government officer. But there are some important exceptions for the Prime Minister. Any allegations that have to do with national security, international relations, or public order, those are off limits. And that's to prevent the highest office from being destabilized by false claims. But for everything else related to corruption, the PM is very much under the Lokpal's watch.
So when you look at all that, a strong law, a balanced team, an independent selection process, and huge jurisdiction, you'd think the Lokpal would be this unstoppable force. But this is where the story takes a turn. This is where we have to ask, why is it being called a tiger on paper? Let's dive into that frustrating gap between what it's supposed to do and what it's actually doing.
Okay, this is absolutely crucial. The Lokpal Act says it needs its own inquiry wing to do preliminary investigations. This is supposed to be the engine of the whole thing. But the parliamentary report found that this wing was only formally set up in 2024, years late. And even now, it's not de facto or in reality functional. Why not? Because the basic service regulations needed to actually hire people are still waiting for approval. The impact of this is just massive.
I mean, how can you investigate anything without investigators? It's like having a police headquarters with 0 police officers. The entire process breaks down right at the very first step.
And guess what? It's pretty much the same story with the prosecution wing. This is the part that's supposed to take people to court once an investigation finds evidence. Its formation is completely on hold. The official reason? They're saying there's a low volume of cases that need prosecuting. But see, this is a classic chicken and egg problem, right? If your inquiry wing isn't even working to investigate cases, you're never going to have any cases ready for prosecution in the first place. It's this circular logic that's basically paralyzed the whole institution.
You can even see this gridlock in the money. The budget that's given to the Lokpal isn't even being fully used. Last financial year, more than 15% of its budget, that's over 10 crore rupees, went unspent. Now this isn't because they don't need the money, it's a direct symptom of this paralysis. The Lokpal just doesn't have the staff or the operational setup to do its job, so it can't even spend the money it's been given. That's a huge red flag for any institution.
And on top of those huge operational failures, the report points out other weaknesses baked right into the act itself. For one, the Lokpal doesn't have constitutional backing, so unlike, say, the Election Commission, a simple majority in Parliament could weaken the Lokpal Act, making it vulnerable. Second, there are no dedicated special courts to hear Lokpal cases, which means they just end up in the already overburdened court system, which completely defeats the whole point of speedy justice. There's also a 7-year time limit to file a complaint, which means some complex, old corruption scandals might just get a free pass. And a big one, the judiciary itself isn't under the Lokpal's watch, which brings up that age-old question, who watches the watchers?
So the problems are pretty clear. The diagnosis is not looking good. But just knowing what's wrong is only half the battle. So what's the way forward? Well, the Parliamentary Committee laid out some very specific, actionable steps to give the Lokpal back its bite.
The committee's given a clear, time-bound plan. First and foremost, they're saying get the inquiry and prosecution wings fully staffed and working within 6 months. No more excuses. In the meantime, they recommend setting up a proper coordination system with existing agencies like the CVC and the CBI to use their resources. To speed up trials, they want at least one dedicated special court set up in Delhi right away. And finally, to stop bureaucratic delays, they want mandatory deadlines for government departments to reply to the Lokpal's request for information.
The recommendations also look to the future, which is great. They're pushing for a total modernization. This means things like setting up digital platforms to file complaints and submit evidence in real time, cutting down on delays. It means using tech like AI to analyze complex financial data that a human might miss. It also means hiring specialists, like forensic accountants, who can handle sophisticated financial crimes. It's really all about making the watchdog not just stronger, but way smarter and faster too.
All right, for all of you preparing for exams, let's zero in on this. Let's boil it all down into the key concepts and analysis you'll need to really nail an answer on this topic.
These terms are your absolute foundation. We've talked about statutory body and sui generis. It's also critical to know how the Lokpal connects to other agencies. For instance, the CBI gets its power from the DSPE Act. The CVC is the main vigilance body. The Lokpal actually has supervisory powers over these agencies for cases it gives them. And all of this works under the Prevention of Corruption Act, the main law that defines what corruption is. Knowing how all these pieces fit together is so important. And here you go, this table is your quick revision guide. It's the perfect way to frame an answer because it directly connects the big problems, the non-functional wings, the delays, the lack of expertise, with the concrete solutions that have been proposed. It's a perfect snapshot of the problem and the solution all in one place.
And if you ever need just one sentence to sum up the entire situation, this is it. The law is strong, the idea is solid, but the real-world impact is incredibly limited. The problem isn't the law itself, but the lack of follow-through, the administrative and political will to actually make it work.
So at the end of the day, fixing the Lokpal isn't about just one simple thing. It needs a whole bunch of things happening at once. Urgent action to build up the institution itself, adopting modern technology to make it effective, and, maybe most importantly, rebuilding public trust so people actually believe it can deliver justice.
And that really leaves us with this final, big question to think about. We have this powerful law, a law that was born from a huge nationwide movement, and yet the institution today is just a shadow of what it was supposed to be. So is the story of the Lokpal just a classic case of having strong laws on the books, but lacking the real will to bring them to life? That's the fundamental question to reflect on here.